Okay, let's begin.
Good morning, Patriot listeners. This is Jeremy Munson on Political Pitchforks and AM 1280 The Patriot. We're kicking off another candidate interview today, this time with a little unorthodox for being a conservative talk show. We're going to interview an independent candidate for governor, Mr. Mike Newcome. And he is in studio today. Susan is in Miami Beach. She evidently does not like snowflakes, so she is avoiding them altogether. She might join us by phone, partially through the show, but I'm excited to interview Mike Newcome because as I look at the field of Republicans that are running for office, we have some great candidates, and I'm going to vote for a Republican candidate. However, when you have 13, and there is a complete baker's dozen now running on the Republican ticket, and a majority have said they're going to primary. When you have a primary election in August, mid-August, with 13 candidates, it is possible that with 4 or 5 of the candidates dividing the votes of the establishment lane, we may end up with a candidate who does not appeal statewide. Someone could emerge in a 13-way race with less than 8% of the vote as the winner. The primary does not require a majority vote. It just requires a plurality or the largest percentage among all of the candidates. So therefore, I also look back to 1998, where we had a Minnesota gubernatorial election where we had some fantastic candidates on both sides running. The Democrats had Mark Dayton, billionaire businessman Mark Dayton. They had 2 sons of former vice president of the United States. We had Ted Mondale and Skip Humphry. State senators running on the Republican side. My friend Al Quist was running. Norm Coleman, who was a former Democrat, mayor of St. Paul, was running. And what emerged from that race was an independent candidate with the Reform Party, Jesse Ventura, who mopped up the votes all over the metro and the suburbs, and he won with like 38% of the vote. So this was a scenario that we have to look at when looking at this election, if we have an independent candidate and a weakened Democrat candidate. There's a lot of Democrats out there who are not excited about Tim Walz for a third term. After running nationally and the local media kind of being exposed for protecting him during previous elections and all the fraud and waste and abuse that taxpayers in the middle are upset with, Tim Walz may not be their ideal candidate. And if he sticks in the election, there may be a lot of Democrats that look at a third-party candidate like Mike Newcome. So, Mike, welcome to the show. Thank you for doing the interview. And tell us, first of all, just introduce us and tell us why you're running.
Sure. So I appreciate it. I am Mike Newcome, and I'm a born and raised Minnesotan. I want people to know that. I grew up in White Bear Lake, so I always have to say go Bears. Otherwise, my classmates from 1987 will send me text messages. So why I'm running and why I'm running right now, because for me, this isn't just another election. I see this upcoming election as for the heart and soul of Minnesota. I think we're going to either continue down a toxic partisan path of getting nothing done, or we can take the alternative path of trying to bring people together and accomplish something on behalf of Minnesotans. And so one of my mantras is that we no longer have a government that's actually by the people and for the people. It's now by the political party and for their special interest. And I've been pointing out that our current leaders are so steeped in their partisan battles. To kind of paraphrase LBJ, if a Democrat walked across Lake Minnetonka in the middle of summer, the Republicans most likely would put out a press release saying Democrats can't swim. And so as a result of those type of politics that are taking place in St. Paul right now, and all your listeners know that, Minnesotans aren't being served. I mean, the simple facts are this. Our major cities are in decline and crime's out of control. Businesses no longer see Minnesota as a good investment, and I'm a former business owner. We don't have a red carpet. We have a do not enter sign. We have a spending problem at our capital, but again, our leaders on both sides of the aisle are invested in their partisan battles, and it's a zero-sum, we win game, they lose game, and nothing's getting taken care of it, and the rest of us Minnesotans are seeing the effect. And I tell people, I joke, we're no longer, Minnesota is now more synonymous with fraud than frostbite, mosquitoes, and the 4 Super Bowls the Vikings lost in the 70s. But people say, quit reminding us of that. So can we talk about the 2 World Series we won in the late 80s and the 90s? So with all that kind of coming together, and I look at it and I say, we have a problem. And I don't see it as a people problem. It's a system problem. And how did we get here? And so that's what really motivated me after. I think a lot of people are probably going to hear this and they're going to think the same thing I was thinking. Boy, I could do a much better job than our current leaders are doing. And it's not as though I just woke up and thought that. But you wake up and you realize we need to make a fundamental change. I have a 15-year-old son. I have an 18-year-old son. I want them to stay in Minnesota. I want them to live in Minnesota, and I want them to prosper just like I did. And I think every Minnesotan understands the fact that everyone should have equal access to that good life. And that's why I'm jumping in the race, because every Minnesotan needs equal access to the good life. And the last thing that I think will resonate with people, and you called me an independent, and I might be, I'm not conservative. So my talking points and my values this: creating a thriving business environment in Minnesota, ensuring we have a world-class public school system that actually prepares our kids for their future, public safety, ensuring that our wonderful environment stays in line, and ensuring we have an accountable and an efficient government. That's not left-wing talking points. That's not right-wing talking points. That's Minnesotan talking points. So to your listeners, I think what I just said is whatever their sit, that resonates with them. And my friends who are Democrats, they say, that resonates with me, Mike, and the rest is noise. So my campaign's going to be simple. That's what we're focusing on. Solutions. I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you this. I know what the solution isn't. Exactly what we've been living through for the last 38, 16 years. Look where we are. We're in this ditch. The whole entire state. And I'm sitting with you and I'm sitting with your listeners, and we're saying something's busted. And you talked about the Republican field, and they want to run as far away from all of this fraud and waste and abuse, and they want to blame our governor. I think our governor's done a disservice to the state. He's been a poor administrator, plain and simple. But they've been riding shotgun this entire time. And I've asked the leading Republicans who are in this race, give me one piece of legislation since 2018 that you proposed to fight against fraud, waste, and abuse in our government agencies. And it's crickets. Well, no, 2025. I said, sorry, I'm 56 years old and I knew there was fraud, waste, and abuse in this state since day one. Where were you? Now they're running on it.
Yeah, and I'll say that the main bill that they probably brought up was this Office of Inspector General, where you have this person that's there to only investigate fraud with a team of attorneys. And I'll say, you know what? I wrote that bill 5 years ago, and when I worked with the what do you call them? The attorneys upstairs that write all the bill, the revisers, to research and write that bill. At the end, she came back to me and said, you know what you just did is you basically recreated the Office of Attorney General and their team of attorneys. You've basically duplicated it, because that is his job, right? That is his job to prosecute fraud. The problem is that the Attorney General and all the county attorneys are trying to weigh, should I go after white collar crime or nonviolent, ballot theft or fraud versus violent crime. And I can't fault them for prioritizing prosecuting violent criminals, but we do need to get our hands around all the fraud. And that bill would basically create a separate attorney general and team of lawyers that would just solely be focused on fraud.
So to my point, and I'll bring up something. By the way, I did see that, and I think it's Christine Robbins. She proposed the whistleblower, which might have helped, bring a little bit this more. But what we're talking about there is creating another bureaucracy. Republicans, we're small government people. You create another bureaucracy, and it won't help. So I see
what we need
here.
is, you can fund all of government you want, but you need them to actually go out and prosecute criminals. So we'll get back to that after the break. Again, you're listening to AM 1280 The Patriot. This is Political Pitchforks with Jeremy Munson and Susan Sjogren-Smith. Susan is out this week. We are interviewing gubernatorial candidate Mike Newcome.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back, Patriots. This is Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I'm your host, Jeremy Munson. Susan Sjogren-Smith is out this week, and we are interviewing Minnesota gubernatorial candidate Mike Newcome, who is running as an independent. Now, Mike, we were talking about fraud in the first segment, and I wanted to wrap that up. I know it's a larger issue, but tell me about your solutions when people come to you about fraud. How are you proposing to address that under the Newcome administration?
So, great question. And I do want to circle back because we were talking about solutions to it. And I happened to go down to the Republican Gubernatorial Forum in Owatonna down in Steele County, simply because I think when you're doing a job interview, it's nice to sit in the lobby and see the other candidates that you're up against. And the surprising thing to me is, of course, everybody there talked about fraud and how it is our governor's fault. And some of the sitting legislators, of course, were riding shotgun, but it's the governor's fault. And every single solution that came from the candidates was we're going to hire auditors, we're going to hire lawyers, and we're going to create the biggest bureaucracy known to mankind to combat all this governmental fraud. And my statement was, so we're going to hire more alligators to take care of the alligator problem. That's the Republican solution. My solution is a lot different because that's a reactive solution. What I'm looking at is a proactive solution. And I have a cousin of mine who runs an insurance company out of Illinois. And we were talking last year, and he said, one of the things we're doing to combat fraud, waste, and abuse in our system is we're leveraging technology. We're able to bolt on, use the evil word AI program. We teach this program the norms and the rules, and it's an intuitive program. And you can lay that type of a program over the Medicaid payment process, and it'll immediately, within real time, flag these, oh, hey, wait, we didn't pay $100 million to that institution last week, but now they have a $100 million claim coming through. Stop it, escalate it. It can go to a real human being investigator. So bad potential payments get stopped. Good payments go through fast. One Republican, and I won't say his name, went to my website and said verbatim what he's going to do to combat fraud. And I said, you know what? They're paying attention to me. But the rest of the Republicans, we're going to create a larger bureaucracy. It's like George Bush, we need to stop terrorists getting through the airport. Let's create the TSA. So it's not the solution. Everyone has a proactive solution, a reactive solution. I have a proactive solution. And I think that's what Minnesotans are looking for. They don't want to find out 6 months later that they've been robbed. And here's the deal. We already have a state auditor that's sleeping. The state auditor should have been all over this. We already have an attorney general that was sleeping, and they should have been all over this. And that's why I say both sides of the aisle are culpable for what we're up against. And if your listeners are actually looking for a solution versus the same rhetoric that they're going to hear, that's why I'm in this race, to bring them a viable alternative to what they've been up against.
Well, great. I want to talk about I went out to your website, which is newcomeforgovernor.com.
Yep.
And one of the things that I found on your website, which was shockingly similar to the language I've been using, is talking about in Minnesota's environment. When people on both sides of the aisle ask me my opinion on what do we do about mining, on the North Shore. First of all, it's important for listeners to know that if you like electric cars and you want that mandate, my listeners probably don't, but for Democrats at least, over half of the lithium-ion battery is made of nickel, and so you need nickel, and we have a ton of it in Minnesota. We shouldn't be mandating electric cars if we don't have a solution for mining it. And we've destroyed the environment everywhere in the world where we've mined nickel. So if we can't do it here safely, we shouldn't be mandating lithium-ion batteries. The insurance policy part of your website is what really attracted me, because I've been telling people that government shouldn't be out there being the police dogs for these mining companies. They should be going out and buying a $5 billion real insurance policy that's enforceable. And then the insurance company would have inspectors out there every day of the week taking soil samples, looking for leaches. And they would put pressure on the mining company to find better, more innovative ways, cleaner ways of mining, to lower their premiums, instead of being able to just pay off a bureaucrat, $500,000, or send their kids to summer camp in Las Vegas in exchange for looking the other way and destroying our environment. That's my solution, and I see that in what you wrote. Yeah. Is that kind of how you see it for your solution for mining?
Well, absolutely. So somebody went to my website and saw that. They said, "So you're anti-mining?" I said, "No, I'm for the environment. I'm not anti-mining." And in doing the research on opening up these nickel mines and access to our most precious part of Minnesota, the companies that want to do this, they're foreknown companies by billionaires. They've been doing this around the world. They're like terraformers. They come in, they extract everything, they close their shell company, and then the state or the country that they've done that in is left holding the bag. And all I'm saying is, if we're going to allow our resources to be extracted from the most precious thing we have in Minnesota, and that's our environment, let's ensure we have an insurance policy, not an empty shell company to go after the fact. And I'm the one that no one else is proposing that, because either, Kendall Walz seems like a nice guy. His statement to the Republicans down in Steele is, "We're going to drill, baby, drill in Minnesota." Well, I didn't know we had shale here, but, good talking point. I'm just about responsible business. And again, you're talking to a business owner. I was in private equity, and we focused on all renewable energies. That was our focus when inside of that. And what we recognize is that if we're going to get involved in renewable energies, it's a messy business, and it's got to be done right. And when you're extracting these resources from the earth, let's just ensure that we're not left with a 3M mess like I live in Lake Elmo, where everyone has to have water and filtration systems because the PFCs are, everywhere in the world. That's my point. You and I are aligned on that. I guarantee 100% of Minnesotans say, if we can mine safely, not destroy our environment, let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, that's I like that platform on your website, and I agree with it. The talking points, I think, on both sides is, the Democrats don't want to allow mining at all, and the Republicans want to just let government be the watchdogs, and that's not typically a solution that's proven to be successful for protecting our environment. Let's talk about education. Where are you on education? Do you support private, do you support vouchers for students to go to private school? I mean, you look at North Minneapolis and some of the failed schools in the metro. I think it's an issue that cuts across the aisle, but where are you at on this?
So, I mean, right now, Minnesota's, the one thing we used to be able to hang our hat on was our public schools. And sadly, as everyone's seeing, they're in decline. My first goal would be to ensure that our public schools are world class. Now, does that involve giving parents choice to possibly take that $7,200, which the state follows that pupil? It's something I'm open to sitting down with and having a real discussion in a non-politicized environment. But not every single area of this state has that alternative to the failing public school. So it is extremely important that we shore up our public schools and actually get them heading in the right direction to give these kids the opportunity so that they're prepared for their future. The most important thing to me is to get all the political and special interest agendas out of these classrooms, and we need to start focusing on what's actually important. Now, that is not actually moving heaven and earth, because this is an 80% deal. You talk to everyone in Minnesota, and everyone across the board agrees our schools are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we have these, whether they're funded or unfunded mandates, that are destroying and putting so much pressure on these school districts, whether it's a time commitment pressure or a financial pressure. And I use this example. There's a program right now, and you're probably familiar with it. It was called Achievement and Integration. Maybe you're aware of it or you're not. Forget what the program goals were. So it's been operating since 2013 in our public school system. And the legislative audit came out and said that it has 0% of meeting its own objective goals and not even close to preparing kids for the future. That program in fiscal 24-25 cost the taxpayers of Minnesota and local entities $138 million to do nothing. And it's been going on since 2013, and it came out of a failed program that was running well before that. They said, the state auditor said, well, that's a failed program. Legislator said, well, let's start another failed program. So Democrats and Republicans said, well, okay, we'll all agree, and let's get this next failed program out there. This is the type of stuff that we can actually address in a bipartisan fashion.
Well, one of the things that when I ran for Congress a few years ago, I wanted to end the Federal Department of Education, not because I want to handicap schools, but because I want to free up local decisions to empower school boards and state legislatures to set policy instead of everybody dictating, from Washington, D.C. on how every state has to run theirs. I know that ending the Federal Department of Education may well likely shift Minnesota schools more to the left because they would have the state legislature, which is run by Democrats, to impose these policies, but it would also likely empower local school boards to make better choices and decisions locally. As a Republican, I believe in competition driving improvement and innovation, and we need more competition, not less. And so allowing the schools in Edina to do something different than the schools in Owatonna or in rural Minnesota, that is how we're going to better improve the education for our children. And I like that idea. Let's talk about it after the break. We're going to take one more break, and we're going to come back and get a little bit more into education and follow Mike Newcome through some of the other policy platforms on his website. So you're listening to AM 1280, The Patriot, and Political Pitchforks with Jeremy Munson and Susan Sjogren-Smith.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back, Patriots, to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Munson, and we are now joined by the other co-host, Susan Smith from Miami, where there are no snowflakes currently. Susan, welcome back.
A lot of snowflakes, actually.
There are a lot of snowflakes.
No actual snow, but lots of snowflakes.
Yeah. We of course are interviewing the gubernatorial candidate Mike Newcome, who is running as an independent, so outside of the baker's dozen of Republicans, and currently I think there's only there's a few Democrats, but obviously Tim Walz is still in the race. I want to just give a little bit of background, Mike. I do occasionally vote for independent candidates. My first election, so I was raised by far lefties, by Bernie Sanders socialists, and I had to find my own path towards the Republican Party. And during that journey, I voted in my first presidential election for outsider independent candidate Ross Perot, who was a billionaire businessman and was sick of the hyper-partisan politics and wanted to go and shake things up. He was my first candidate I voted for. I followed that up by voting for Jesse Ventura for governor when I lived in Minneapolis. And I think that's about it for independent candidates that I voted for, that I'm going to say that I voted for in the show. But it is a possibility. And of course, we talked about the 98 election with Jesse Ventura in Minnesota, how your race could mirror that. One of the things that I agree with my liberal family on is the sickening amount of money in politics, right? Bernie Sanders wants to ban, advertising with Citizens United and basically limit the First Amendment of people being able to go out and advertise. I took the pledge to not accept corporate PAC dollars in my campaign. It's tough. And when I ran for Congress, I saw millions of dollars spent against me by one man who's now in prison. And so I understand the power of outside money influencing elections. And on the Democrat side, as I'm going to throw rocks on that side, it's the public unions and that are spending so much money in organizing and bussing people around to door knock. Where do you stand on money in politics? What's your solution and what's your stance on it?
So I said this in the beginning of why I jumped in this race, because we no longer have a government that is by the people and for the people. It is now by the parties and for their special interests. And it's destroying politics and it's destroying results because these elected officials are no longer going. I think they go into politics and get into office with all the right intentions, and then they get tapped on the shoulder and say, remember who you worked for. And I put a meme out there with a Democrat and a Republican with money coming out of their pockets and Darth Vader-ish type character standing above them and saying, who's your daddy? And that's where we're at right now. And I think if Minnesotans recognize the fact that this influence in this system is way more than they could even imagine. If we made politicians like NASCAR drivers put the badges all over them or where that's money coming from, people would say, oh, I didn't realize that. Well, wait, you said you're going to lower my healthcare costs, but you're getting that much money from healthcare insurance companies, healthcare providers. Well, what's your incentive to actually get our healthcare reduced? There is no incentive because that's who their daddy is. So I am not accepting corporate money. I'm not accepting PAC money. I'm accepting money from people in Minnesotans because the only special interest that I have in this entire race is to actually get something done. And again, I don't want to attack the people in the parties because I think there's a lot of well-intentioned, but once you get in and you get plugged into the matrix, you're just there to give power to that system. So that's where I stand. I think it's clear.
I want to say that to me, I think it's not even the parties. I think that we have a group of political consultants that drive this entire process. It actually starts outside of that, and I think they figure out which candidates they want to have run, and they bring them in wherever they want to bring them in from. Sometimes even out of state, they move people around. It's not just a Minnesota problem; it's really a nationwide problem. And I think many of the candidates in politics do not wake up and decide that it's their duty, their time to serve their country. It's that some person approaches them and says, "Hey, I want to make a proposal. I've got donors. People will help you do this." And then those donors and those people guide the campaigns, the direction they want to guide them. And we see it with the narratives and the talking points, right? And so to me, I think it is the PAC money, I think, is a serious problem. And it is the way the system runs. It was designed to be that way. It's hidden. It's the way they hide the money, right? It's all hidden through the PACs. Nobody has any idea. But in Minnesota, we have a serious issue with money that has nothing to do with Minnesota coming into Minnesota to manipulate and influence our politicians in our elections. And that is why we have all these problems that we're having in Minnesota. It's not about Minnesota at all. It's about outside interests manipulating the state and manipulating the process. And the people don't even have any idea where the money's coming from. And nobody reports on it. We have no media that tells the truth.
Let me touch on that. It's very interesting that you said people come to you. And I'm not going to tell you who, and I'm not going to tell you from where. I was approached, and they said, Mike, we can put a lot of money behind your campaign. You're the type of person that's going to win an election, and here's how it's going to be if you need money. And it's exactly why I went to the Forward Independence Party, because that is exactly what I'm running against. And it's kind of like I would rather cut my nose off to spite my face than to take that sloppy money, get into office, and then have to bow down and do exactly the opposite of what I've promised I'm going to do, which is work for Minnesotans. And that's a difference between me, and that's a difference between who's going to run as a Democrat and who's going to run as a Republican. I'm doing this, this moonshot. I'm going to the moon, but I'm doing it on my own, and I'm doing it with you guys, not with my sponsors. You're my sponsor.
Yeah. When I was elected, Mike, I wanted to be an agent of change. Yep. I ran on healthcare policies because Obamacare was crushing us as a self-employed business owner, and premiums were skyrocketing. Energy costs were going up even back then. And I wanted to change, and I change the policies that were driving those increased costs. When I got to St. Paul, I found out that Democrats want to give free health insurance to everybody, want the government to take it over. Republicans wanted to take my tax dollars and give it back to me as some kind of subsidy through reinsurance. And none of them were addressing the underlying cost of care, which can be fixed with free markets and opening up access to care in competition. The same thing with energy policy, right?
Oh.
Met with a lobbyist from Excel, and he was talking about solar and wind and all this stuff. And I said, well, who's pushing back against all of these extra costs in energy? And he's like, nobody. We get paid to put all these things in. So the PUC just authorizes rate increases. No one is fighting for the ratepayer or the patient in St. Paul. It's just both sides have their team that funds them. And it's also difficult when legislators get elected to worry about primaries and stuff. It's so much easier to just go with the flow versus having to fight to get back to St. Paul through a reelection if the sides turn on you. Look, I'm a Republican, and I had the Chamber of Commerce spending money against me in a primary because I wanted to change things. So it's going to be a rough and bumpy road for you in the future.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm open to the rough and bumpy road, and that's okay. I came up through the business ranks. I was a sales guy. I was never the smartest guy in the room, and I've never taken the path least traveled. But as I said in the opening here, we are really at a crossroads in Minnesota. The heart and soul of our state is on the line, and I'm willing to put myself out there, this message out there, for one last punch to say, Minnesotans, if you believe in world-class public schools, thriving business environment, safe schools, and accountable government, that's not a Republican talking point, and that's not a Democrat talking point. That's a Minnesotan talking point. An
American talking point.
It is. It's an American talking point, and it's not going back to the same well and think they're all of a sudden going to get something done. And I'll go real quick. So I use the analogy. We've had a trifecta we've been under the regime of a trifecta from one party. And we could potentially be under the regime of a trifecta from another party. And this is my analogy. It's your buddy who wants to use your pickup truck to move a couch. You're reluctant on giving him the keys because you're like, I don't know if I can trust him. But you do. You give him the keys to your truck. He goes out, gets hammered, runs over 400 mailboxes. 2 weeks later, brings back your truck, and he said, what happened to the truck? Well, the mailboxes got in the way. That's what happens when we allow one party control or other party control. And that's where I come in. I'm a safe harbor. I'm a safe harbor for both of these parties because they'll do business with me and they'll feel good about it. And they can go back to their constituents and say, we didn't give the other guy the win. We gave Minnesota a win. And that's why I think I have a very unique position in this election right now to be able to call on Minnesota voters, but also Democratic legislators and Republican legislators to say, hey, guys, you really want to get something done? And I know a lot of you do. We can get it done together, and you can still go back and have the win. I don't care. I don't want the win. I want Minnesota to win.
Like, where do you stand on like some of these 80-20 issues, like protecting girls' sports? I know you've got two boys. I have two girls the same age as your boys. They both play sports.
Yep.
Where are you on keeping kids in the sport of their birth gender?
So, very quick. I want to be empathetic and sympathetic to the young kids who are experiencing that struggle in adolescence. With that being said, girls' sports and girls' spaces in locker rooms and on the playing field are for girls, biological girls. My wife said we're setting Title IX back 50 years, Mike. And I said, I understand. So plain and simple, can we have a possible approach to accommodate somebody? Yeah, without destroying 50 years in a girl's sport? Absolutely. So bottom line, these need to be safe for women, period. End of story. That's it. But I'm not hating. I'm not hating on everyone. I'm just saying women's sports need to be protected, period.
Yeah.
I don't like the hate.
In the next segment, we're going to get into some lightning round questions for you to kind of shore up where you're at on things. And I know that your campaign is new, so you may not have all the answers right now. But you've been running for what, just a few weeks in your campaign?
Just a few weeks. Make them softballs, please. I'll get. I don't want the hard questions.
Okay.
Nobody does.
I know, I'm kidding.
All right. Well, you're listening to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot. We'll be back after the break with gubernatorial candidate Mike Newcome.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back to Political Pitchforks, where we are interviewing Mike Newcome, independent candidate for governor. Mike, we had some words during the break about how this works logistically, and I think it's important for viewers to understand the Independence Forward Party had their endorsing convention or had has endorsed your campaign. So you do not go to a primary. You will be on the November ballot. So you are campaigning in the general while the Republicans and possibly Democrats have this battle for the primary where they kind of go right and left for the endorsement. Is that right?
Correct. The Forward Independence Party had their endorsement process. It was an executive process. So I am on the ballot, but because the Forward Independence Party is now a minor party, next May and going into June, we're going to have to collect the signatures to officially get on the ballot. But I am the endorsed candidate, and I'm on the ballot as the Forward Independence endorsed candidate.
Okay. And as a minor party candidate, do you qualify for the political contribution refund program like the major party candidates do?
Would have, had I not invested my own money over and above that. The party does. Okay. I don't.
Okay. So you've chosen to help self-finance your campaign with a six-figure contribution so that you don't qualify for public subsidies like other minor party candidates would.
Correct. That's what's given me this push out, is that I've committed that money to the, I already put it in the thing, and next year I'll do more.
All right. Well, we're going to start some lightning round questions. Susan, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I think it sounds like you guys haven't spent much time talking about government-run healthcare, and I'm sure you're familiar with what's happening in Minnesota. Obviously, we have some of the fraud issues, and then additionally, we have massive changes in healthcare premiums coming up in just a few short weeks. People are going to realize what they're facing, and also deductible changes, benefits are changing, covered services, choice of doctors is going away, kind of all the things that we're warned about 10 years ago, 15 years ago with Obamacare. It's all coming true. No conspiracy theories here. So what do you think? Give us your opinion about government-run healthcare and how do we protect the rights of people to access healthcare?
So, I've been talking to subject matter experts on government-run healthcare, and I'll be honest, I don't have a firm positioning one way or the other. But what I do know is we have a mess. We have a mess coming, and it's going to affect every single one of us. So my commitment is this. We're going to non-politicize this, and we're going to bring in subject matter experts. And at the end of the day, we're going to hopefully come up with a solution. And I think people who are telling you they have a solution are just telling you they have a solution to get your vote.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Jeremy, I think we talk a lot with other past candidates about power issues, energy issues, nuclear power, clean energy. Where are you going with that?
Cleanest, most efficient form to produce energy is nuclear power. You can't beat it when it's done right, and the United States has done it right. And what we just need to do is educate people that nuclear power, again, cleanest, most efficient power source on the planet when done right. Don't drop it on a fault line. Don't put it in a hurricane zone. And we have clean and efficient power. If you're green, you're for nuclear, period.
Yeah. And for the liberals out there, the four that listen to our show, the 3 nuclear reactors in Minnesota take the equivalent of like 2.5 million cars off the road, carbon wise every year. So you want nuclear.
And they produce at about 3 cents a kilowatt hour, the nukes. Everything else is inefficient, dirty, and ugly.
They don't call you Newcome for nothing.
I was in the energy business. I snuck up on you there.
So one of the issues that I think people are becoming more aware of, I hope so, if they're not, we need to make sure they are the growing use of data centers and the moving of data centers into communities.
Yeah.
And the financial implications for that, but also the implications about things like water, et cetera. So how do you feel about data centers and costs and who pays and how do we do it?
Unbelievable question that absolutely nobody is paying attention to. We really have to delve into this because it's going to affect the rates of the citizens around those data centers and the aquifers where they're going to be pulling the water from. I don't have all the answers and the stuff, but I will tell you this. We are definitely, as a society, we need to look into this, and people are paying no attention. I'm paying attention, and I will. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be a serious issue in Minnesota, especially. I mean, if you use Netflix, you got to understand that somewhere the data center is running to power that so that you can watch it, and that data center needs lots of water to cool. So
look at
the growing use of AI is having a tremendous impact on the use of power and how that's working. And I think people really don't understand it. And there are communities already having problems around the country because of just the power, the energy grids. How do they fuel it? How do they keep it cool? and it's a mess.
Listen, it's a mess, and the only way to get the power there is to bring in more lines or to put in battery backups, which is no one's going to let a new line go through their backyard, and then you start doing these battery backups. It's something that needs to be addressed, and I think it was in Lakeville or wherever. Meta just bought another place, and they're going to put up a data center, and everyone around them is going to be punished for it. But you have Netflix.
Right. And, speaking of AI, Andrew, I think it was Andrew Yang, who's tied to the Forward Party, one of the founders, this great informational, it was a letter or whatever I read about how 44% of all of the current jobs out there could be replaced with AI, like a significant amount of people in white collar jobs and a significant amount of people in blue collar jobs do repetitive tasks that could be replaced with AI robots or, just AI logic. The part of the solution to that, as he sees it, is to do this universal basic income, start cutting checks to people, redistributing wealth to all families to give them security and stuff. That's part of Andrew Yang's platform. I don't know if it's part of the Forward Party or not. Where are you on universal basic income?
So, I remember running on that. I haven't done enough research to determine whether or not it's a viable or unviable. Right now, it's not my position. But when it comes to AI, my position is we have to look into this. Listen, I love AI. I use it every day, but we can't keep it in the hands of 3 people who are going to be trillionaires, and the rest of us are going to be left swinging.
The question, I think, for me about AI is when AI is a tool being used by people, by humans, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But when AI is directing the way people think, which is really, I think, the goal of AI, actually, for the people who created and designed it, and we already have a critical thinking problem in America and increasingly around the world, and that AI is actually going to make it easier for people to be less concerned about thinking, right? The AI is too predictive, and so I think this is it's a problem. Their kids are using it in school, like they're just teaching. You just type in a question, get the answer, or whatever. So this is a serious problem. It sounds like a great idea until it's not.
It is an issue, and it scares the daylights out of me. And I am trying to get up to speed so that we can have that discussion. But we need to have it as a state, and people just don't. Yeah. It's like predicting that we're going to have snow when no one's ever saw snow. Hey, it's coming.
Well, we're going to have a deep conversation on AI on today's show later on, and about free speech and about how AI is, states and even the federal government are trying to regulate AI and how it impacts freedom of speech. We talked about the Russian, involvement in we don't, but the Democrats do in the 2016 election. AI could start creating all these accounts and influencing us or distracting us with cat videos so that, it influences the election too. It could be a powerful tool used against us.
Yeah, I think it already is. Real quick, election integrity, voter rolls, early voting, public participation, the refusal to let the public observe what's happening at the absentee ballot boards. Where do you stand on these issues? Because, by the way, you won't have election judges.
Yeah. So every one of those issues, to me, the most sacred thing we have are our elections, and that every single person in Minnesota and throughout this country wouldn't believe in ensuring that these are the cleanest, most properly run with, and I don't want to use fraud, but with wrong people voting. If you don't believe in that, there's something wrong with you, period. So again, I don't have a platform that says we're going to eliminate this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But I will tell you right now that it is essential that we have good elections. People who shouldn't be voting shouldn't be voting. If you have a driver's license and it was handed to you, it should say non-voter.
I'm going to pin you down on an issue right now I think you should agree to.
Okay.
Provisional ballots. If
Right.
you want to vote the same day and register the same day and it takes us 2 weeks to figure out who you are,
Right.
we're going to let you vote, but we're going to put your ballot aside and mark it provisional until we can prove who you are before we open it and put it in the machine. Because as soon as it's a machine, it's mixed with the rest. Do you support provisional ballots?
Who would argue with that? It's a common sense solution that doesn't disenfranchise anybody. It ensures good, clean election, period.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, Mike, how can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of your campaign and, help you out if they choose to do that?
Yeah, so website is newcomeforgovernor.com. That's new, Newcome, forgovernor.com. We have a website, Facebook page. Go on there, reach out to us. You have questions, I will actually answer them. If you're looking for a common sense solution person to actually solve some problems, jump on board the train because we're going to the station.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in for another episode of Political Pitchforks with Susan Sjogren-Smith and Jeremy Munson. And thank you, Mike, for the interview today.
Thanks very much.